On this episode of Star Trek Universe, Effie and I stumble upon a derelict sleeper ship from 1996. Waiting within, the last dictator of the Eugenics Wars, a superhuman known as Khan. We'll be reviewing Star Trek 125 Space Seed right after these words from our mystery augments. Welcome into Star Trek Universe. We are continuing our rewatch / first time watch, it's hard to say, of Star Trek the Original Series. I am David C. Roberson, he who rewatches.
I am Effie Ophelders, she who watches for the first time. What first time watches? Is that a one like singular verb? Sure.
Memory Alpha synopsis. The Enterprise discovers an ancient spaceship carrying genetically enhanced supermen from the late 20th century and their enigmatic warlord leader, Khan Noonien Singh.
Mm-hmm.
This
is good year, 96.
You texted me and thanked me for not spoiling this episode.
Which you definitely did at the end of last episode, but I had forgotten by the time I was watching it.
Uh-huh.
Which goes to show you how okay I am with you spoiling slight things, because I will forget the moment. I was absorbed into the episode, and the moment they said the name, I was like, oh, it's this one. Yeah. And I re-listened to the last episode later, and I was like, oh, you definitely mentioned that. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't remember, but sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've mentioned it several times.
Yeah. Still, I enjoyed the reveal.
Well, that's good. So does the character live up to whatever hype is out there? I don't know. I grew up on this. I have no idea how bad it is for the general audience. Like, I've no clue. I basically all I got in terms of hype around this character was the weirdness around, is Cumberbatch gonna be Khan in Into Darkness? They say he's not, but they're totally lying, but he is, but he's not, but he is. And he was.
Yeah. Added to that I have watched that movie and forgotten all about it, except, someone dies at the end.
Wait, which one? Which one does someone die at the end?
I don't know. Isn't one of them stuck in a chamber at some point, like Spock or Kirk? Or something?
You're talking about Into Darkness.
Yeah. Not this one. No.
Right.
Not this episode. I was still talking about Into Darkness. I don't remember anything except that scene, and I literally do not know which one of them was on which side of the glass. Let's put it that way. That's how much I remember of that movie. But yes, this did live up to this is a very intriguing premise once again. And it actually, there's so much history there. And then they have to deal with a character that is, the actor is working his ass off. Mm-hmm. That is, the performance is just there. Because you reminded me last episode about the whole Sikh Indian thing. That's weird. Yeah. And I'm glad it was just one line that I can very simply ignore because it makes no sense.
Well, yeah, she's a historian, and she doesn't seem to really know.
No, she's bad at her job.
Well,
in multiple ways.
I'm not sure she's bad at her job, actually, to be completely honest. I think there isn't much use for her. And I think when they talk about the historians, Spock even says in this episode, the records from this time are, terrible.
Yeah.
Because there was a war going on. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, well, what would she know? What would she know?
Barely. Fuck all, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah.
She would know, this guy is hot. That is the extent of her professional opinion.
I don't know. I get the feeling we might have differing opinions about some things.
I'm looking forward to that. Do elaborate. Feel free. Take me there.
No. First of all, I want to know, what do you think about this? I've heard so many arguments throughout the years that Space Seed has aged poorly, mostly based on the characterization of Marla McGivers.
Yeah. I can see why.
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine there being an argument, because it was hard for me to, like, deal with her as a person, because she is both being abused and coerced.
Yeah.
And ends up willingly going with them to avoid a court-martial. Like, there's a bunch of where does she stand type stuff. It's like, yeah, you're attracted to this guy, you're also unwilling to betray the ship, but then you have to because he's kind of a forceful asshole, and there's a weird dynamic. But, like, to me, that's the point. Like, there is something toxic as shit going on because Khan is a toxic asshole. Mm-hmm. Like, he is a manipulator from the beginning.
So, Matt and I have reviewed this episode before in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't go back and listen to it because that sounds like torment.
I will do so after this.
So I don't, and I might actually, once this is uploaded, I might go back and be like, okay, what did I say differently? But
how much have I evolved over the years?
So, like I said, the arguments are out there. Marla McGivers has terrible sexist characterization.
Sure.
I don't think it did, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they did with Marla McGivers was kind of brilliant. She was like the rest of the crew's rose-colored nostalgia. Like, she was like rose-colored nostalgia incarnate or something. Like,
yeah.
Because if you look at everyone else, like Scott says there were no massacres under his rule, and Spock is arguing, and his little freedom, no wars until he was attacked. Like, they are totally
idolizing this
guy.
strongman dictator asshole.
Yeah.
And that made it very hard for me to, because you got to that point of like, no, we can object and still admire him. And I was like, no, the fuck you can't. As soon as you get to like, well, but Hitler did some good shit, you're off the, no, that's not, you're now excusing some things.
I think there's a difference between admiring someone and being like, hey, Hitler did some good shit. Like, you can admire, even at this point, Hitler's charisma and his, like, speaking ability and be like, what did he, you could, like, look at it from...
Oh, absolutely. Like, how does this work? Why does this... What was he good at?
Right.
Absolutely. Interesting stuff. It is... Like, there is a way of admiring that doesn't make it sound like, God, I wish I was as charismatic as Hitler. There are better examples to say that sentence.
I don't wish I was as charismatic as Hitler, and I've never thought that. But I have wished that I was as charismatic as Khan.
Fair.
I mean, McCoy's like, well, he has magnetism, almost electric. You felt it. He's talking to Kirk. So there's like, it's not just a stupid, weak female who's going to throw away her career and betray everyone over some dude. This is like, first of all, this is a person, character-wise, who has, like, the captain doesn't even remember her name. She has very little use on this ship. Kirk says, maybe this will give that historian something to do.
Yeah, rude as fuck. She's dismissed. She is basically painting in her own quarters, and that's her job, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think she was actually just, like, off duty, but maybe not.
What else is she historicing in the like...
I mean, I don't know, but... I think it's interesting. You've got a bored person aboard your ship who does nothing. And maybe because he's a dick. I don't think because he's sexist. I think Matt made the argument that Kirk couldn't remember her name and that was inherently sexist. And I was like,
Not inherently. I feel like Kirk forgets half the ship. Like, if that historian had been a man, which of course they wouldn't have written it that way, but if it had been, he would also have been like, don't we have another shrink or something, or a historian or a biologist, I guess? He is more often dismissive of things that, especially when it's humanities, when it's not exact sciences.
Yeah.
He follows that tendency of like, we need engineers. Like, that's useful. I know their names.
Mm-hmm.
But also the underlings in engineering, he'll still walk in and be like, "You there in the red shirt," because he can't keep up.
Mm-hmm. But there's something that I like about this whole, like, watching this time, I am stricken with the notion that this whole episode seems to be a very subtle cautionary tale about regarding the very human practice of rationalizing the flaws of the past to preserve our preference for it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel like it is just like, hey, here's nostalgia and all the things we used to be. You ignore the bad parts so you can be happy with it.
Yeah, so you can live with the past and not learn from it, basically.
But the past should be feared in some ways because it was worse before we... There's this idea, this theme that I noticed this time that I don't think I've really paid attention to before because I was just like, Ricardo Montalban.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I know that it's kind of ironic for me to look at it that way because it seems like I'm rationalizing sexism or something to preserve my love of the original series. But
I see how people could sort of knee jerk into that response, but I see what you're doing in the sense that the show makes that point of no, they're going along with something that is fucked at its core. And there are a lot of perspectives of like, oh no, we're allowing slightly too much of this.
Mm-hmm.
And someone like Khan will take advantage of every inch he's given.
Yeah, there's also a weird thing here where you're like, where I kind of felt like, everything about Gene's future pushed the past away. There would be no real use for a historian in Gene's futuristic world. And in fact,
because we've learned everything from history. Yeah.
And it bugs me a little bit that like all of the historical facts that we get are from Spock. The one thing she said about him being Sikh Indian was not even real.
Yeah.
Except you know what? In the future I think they cast an Indian kid to play him, so I think it does work out that way. So but
yeah, I'm sure they have. Like, I'm sure canonically he was intended to be, they just cast someone else.
Maybe.
It's an interesting choice.
You know what they did that I liked, though? Because originally it was supposed to be like a Nordic character. What I like is that, and whether, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but I liked that they put forth the idea of him being an Indian. And I don't know what Ricardo Montalban is, but he's not Indian.
No.
I can't remember though. But what I like about that, like, mismatch of, race and actor, I like that there's like, they had a genetic Superman who believed in selective breeding, who was, a eugenicist basically. And they made the eugenicist not a white guy. Like, I like that it was,
it's not the Aryan
traditional other
would expect. Yeah.
Right. It's not the traditional other. All right. It is the traditional other as the, white supremacist, essentially. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I get that. It like, there are, of course, ways of doing that and instantly making it problematic because, of course, there's less of a eugenics history outside of the white Western scientific community. But in terms of this is an alternate history, like I'm not too bothered by it. It's like the 90s didn't end up having this specific war, so this timeline is different. We're fine. So I get that it is playing against stereotype.
Yeah.
And again, it is, we're putting the minorities in either antagonistic or supportive roles, but that's kind of where you're stuck in the 60s.
Yeah.
Because you weren't going to get them as main characters. So you're going to end up with either white men fighting white men or white men fighting anybody else so they can get some screen time. So I'm not gonna hold that against them. Where there is this diversity even amongst the eugenics, the race, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
The new subspecies of superior man or whatever. Which is just in and of itself interesting. It might also have gone against a whole lot of what eugenics entailed in reality, but it is an interesting perspective to at least showcase where it's like, okay, so how does this work? What are the traits that we're bred for, apparently, or genetically altered, or however the fuck they did that? We're not gonna overthink that too much, because then we're back to cattle.
You know what? Again, another Star Trek episode that like throws a bunch of expository shit at us that's way more interesting than the rest of the episode.
Absolutely, of course, but I'm not mad at it because I still really enjoyed the plot. I was still like, there's some good lines, there's some fun stuff happening. Yeah. I was into it. I was sold based on the premise. But I was also more satisfied with how the premise was explored because it related more to the plot than just, oh, there's some backstory, don't fucking think about it.
Yeah. I liked the idea. And though they didn't say it outright, I like the idea, first of all, of Khan being ethnic because it implies that by the 90s... there's some inherent hopefulness there as well. Like, even...
Despite the 90s, Eugenics Wars.
Right. Despite that going on, we had at least gotten to a point where we aren't fighting because of race. And we've just decided, well, now that we've all come together, so one of us has to, like, improve our strength and all this shit.
Yeah. Now we just have to get stronger and smarter and taller and handsomer. And then, that is what we need to do.
It was like I like the idea that all of the races of Earth came together and said, let's stop fighting about race. Our real enemy are the ugly people. Let's all get really hot.
Oh my God.
Our faces must be perfectly symmetrical. And instead of having these stupid dorky voices, we will all talk like this. You delicate petal.
Yeah. It is, but it makes for a very interesting character because it is clearly someone who has grown up with the belief, I am better than everyone, and I can do whatever I want to you. Like, the first interaction with MacGyver's, like, from the get-go, it is assert dominance, I might play with you toy. And that is it. And that's how he approaches everything, tactically at best. Like, if there is the most respect he can give is like, I will see you as an enemy to overcome. There's nothing outside of pawns and playthings, and it's just, no, you are nothing compared to me. I need you for certain ends.
I don't think that's entirely true. I think by the end of it, like... because, well, first of all, and this goes back to Marla McGivers in the first place, like, the idea that, first of all, the idea that it's sex, that all of her bad decisions were sexist, and her love of Khan, I feel
like it is clear that everyone has that weird attraction to him where this is a really very self-assured man. There is something magnetic about him.
But let's also look at all of the dudes from all the other episodes who make horrible decisions for the Enterprise crew, and they are part of the crew.
Yeah.
And they are dudes. Many of them get sucked on by a salt vampire, and they were hoping to get sucked off a completely different way.
Yeah.
And, all of the, like, oh my God, like, there's so many idiot crewmen on the Enterprise. Anyone who's not Kirk and Spock and McCoy. And
pretty much, yeah.
So
of course.
It doesn't make me
We're only harsh on her because it is a woman who develops romantic feelings and betrays the ship.
But she also betrays him.
A woman developing romantic... Yeah. Like, she stands up to him at some point, and again, like, he is clearly manipulating her in that scene where he pushes her to the ground and, like, squeezes her hand until she says yes. Like, she is not willingly betray. Like her instinct is, I shouldn't betray this ship. I have a job. I can't fuck over everyone. I know where this will lead.
Yep. But
so I'm not that mad at her. I again am more mad at the, oh no, well, you gotta admire his strong rule as a dictator, where you're like, guys, come on.
They just needed to show that Spock was, thought that they were abhorrent.
Yeah, and I agree as usual with Spock, because the man makes sense and the other ones don't.
But I think I think he was very interested in Marla McGivers. Khan was. I think he was. He treated her like shit.
Absolutely, but I don't think he can treat people like well.
Yeah,
like he is superficially polite to Kirk because it's a fellow commander, and will still fuck him over. But he's I don't think he knows how to connect intimately or authentically with anyone.
But
he is above most people.
I do think he fell for her when she betrayed him. When she was like, I can't watch it happen, and he's like, I had hoped you'd be stronger. I understand. And then she goes and just like, nope, I'm gonna save the captain because you're doing some bullshit now.
Exactly. And I think that earns respect for her, indeed, because he is like at the end warning her, like, it will be hard if you come with us, and she's like, nah, fuck it, I'll show you. And he's like, yes, this is the kind of attitude I like. Yeah. And that is ultimately what he appreciates more than her lack of physical strength compared to the other women aboard, probably. But that's not the issue. It is very much for him about, okay, you dare stand up to me? You've got balls. Yeah. He appreciates that level of guts.
That's also what he did with McCoy, if you recall.
He is immediately like a brave man. Just because McCoy is like, fucking cut my throat, then come on, what are we waiting for?
Yeah. He's like a brave man. This is one of the great episodes, I think.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, I agreed.
If for no other reason than seeing those like Kirk and Khan, like those actors, Shatner and Montalban, just chewing the scenery.
Absolutely. No, it is just so well written, and I this was one that I sat through and immediately thought, there's a reason they wanted to come back to this. There's a reason people still talk about it. Like, this is one of the greats. Yeah.
Yeah. So in reference to Wrath of Khan, they had kicked Roddenberry to the curb and said he couldn't be a part of the production, and they hired Harvey Bennett, and Harvey Bennett sat down and he watched every episode, and he's like, I watched them all just to see if I could get some inspiration, some idea of this world. He's like, I knew what the sequel was as soon as I watched Space Seed. As soon as Space Seed ended, I was like, that's
where you need to pick up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Because I am immediately like, can we get there? Can we go on? Because that's at the end. Indeed, Spock explains the title of the episode. Because you left a very volatile, dangerous element alone in the universe on a whim of let's prove that you're superior. Go conquer this barren world. Where it's like, are you sure this is a good idea?
Did he even report it? Is this something he told
exactly.
Starfleet?
Is a jury of your peers just I as a commander could just make whatever call in this court? This is your punishment. I guess it's allowed. It's not on the books, I presume.
They wild in 21st
Give him a
century.
planet must be a weird punishment otherwise.
Yeah. There's a fantastic
If they weren't superior, it would be starvation or something.
It's a fantastic final thought from Spock. It would be interesting, Captain, to return to that world in 100 years and to learn what crop has sprung from the seed you planted today. Man, that's just a line that's begging for a sequel.
Absolutely. Of course you watch that and you're like, well, if they haven't done this still, I need to make a movie about this.
Uh-huh. Lots of great character interactions here. Spock saying, "I failed to understand why it gives you always gives you pleasure to see me proven wrong," and Kirk says, "An emotional Earth weakness of mine."
Yeah.
I love so much of the dialogue. Like, I couldn't just like go through and like just take every piece of dialogue.
I know. I had the same feeling where it's just, there are so many very poignant, very sharp, just the dialogue is very tight. It's very well written. And that makes me happy when I'm like, these are the characters and they're playing off each other and they sound right. And yet they're sharp, they're witty, they're battling it out for who's gonna win this conversation in a way.
Yeah.
That's just fun, whether it be banter or actual Khan versus Kirk stuff. It's solid.
Yeah, I really enjoy how Khan figures it out so quickly. He's like, "Oh yeah, you let your second in command ask all the questions while you look for weakness." Like,
yeah.
It's like, this is a social gathering. Oh, come on.
Yeah. Don't play with me. Like, this is your second in command taking the heat for you so you can pretend to be neutral and at a social gathering. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think Kirk was really stupid for letting them go down to SETI Alpha 5. They should have been in prison.
Yeah. This is a terrible idea. I
would have liked a little more. I'd like a little more clarification on how that was the decision.
The decision, really, I don't know how he got to that. He's just like, oh no, you did terrible things in multiple centuries, but let's throw you a bone and take over a world instead of just having a continent to conquer. What? No. How do you think these people are gonna stick to an uninhabited world and not expand? That's just, there's some naivete there that I whatever, for the story's sake, I guess. But if there hadn't been a sequel, I would have thought this was a weird seed to plant and never, deal with again.
Well, in the original script, though, they said there's a line where Kirk says something about, it would indeed, but my only concern is if in that 100 years the seed that the seed that sprouts does not come looking for us or some shit like that. It was weird.
That sounds bad. That sounds like I don't give a fuck as long as I'm not there.
Yeah. Well, he says he worries about deal with this shit. He's worried that it will, That's what it was saying.
Well, then don't do it, you dumbass.
Yeah. Whatever. It is one of the great episodes of Star Trek, in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, I think. But that is some faulty-ass logic. Why wouldn't you tell us what the hell? Did you put this scene in just to, prove that you needed the damn court-martial scene? Again, you needed to show another bell. You needed those costumes,
ding, ding.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not sure. Has Dr. McCoy complained about transporting before this episode, or is that?
I don't think so. I feel like he's just been transporting all over the place for the past episodes. Yeah.
But here, his disdain for the transporter is well known.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge trope, but I don't remember him saying anything about, the transporter until this episode. Maybe he did.
No,
I just don't remember.
If so, I didn't know either. I didn't strike me as something I'd heard before. No.
Okay. All right.
I think this is the first time he revolts against having his atoms scattered back and forth.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Let me just write that time down because I don't know what the hell I was thinking.
I have no clue what you were gonna say.
Yeah. This to you, 34 minutes. Yeah, I saw something and my brain went to a place.
It happens.
That was it. I already talked about that. All right. Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. I'm slightly frustrated that I have a lot left to go before the movies, but that's fine. I'll live. We'll get there.
Yeah, that is rough. But at the rate you're going, you don't have nearly as long as it took for the, old school Trekkies who watched a thing in 1967 and then had to wait until 1982 to watch it. The sequel.
Oh, Christ. Oh, God. Yeah, no, okay.
With huge gaps
I don't have to have
never
that
be Star
much
Trek
restraint.
again.
Fair enough. We do live in better times where everything has happened, I guess. Just not the Eugenics Wars, but...
Nothing new happening. Actually, okay, I'll say this. First of all, clearly by now in Star Trek, and this is very recent, we've talked about it, they've turned it to a sliding scale like comic books because of the temporal wars, and they actually had 1992, 96 dropped. They said it's changed. Okay, cool.
Sure, fun. Yeah.
However, I will point out that Greg Cox, wonderful writer, wrote con books that explained that like there were tons of like things in the news that were part of the Eugenics Wars, and it was covered up. So it was a secret war, only looked on in the future as one of the greatest
that was happening,
things.
But at the time they didn't know. Yeah,
like just like all sorts of things from Waco to I guess 9/11 or something. Like all these awful
he
things,
involved
like
that stuff into but actually we were under rule of us. Right. Oh, I'm sure the QAnon folks of today have appreciated that work.
Yeah. But I mean, it was an interesting idea that I really liked.
Absolutely.
That there was all this stuff that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, conspiracy stuff is fun as long as you don't take it seriously and try to overthrow a government.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like there should be more for this episode because it's con and, but... Oh, by the way, Marla McGivers, Kirk wouldn't have lived if she hadn't have saved him. So she did a pretty damn good job. I think that's what it was. He's like, okay, you have a choice. I'm going to give you a choice because, you saved
her. Her getting away with it, I understand. Like, let her... It would be weird for her to get the court-martial and the fucking group of Napoleon dictator types to just have a planet to do whatever with.
Man, I can't.
So
wait for you to watch.
that half of the decision I'm good with. I'm just very curious where it will end up.
Well, let's go and get to the next thing, since that's how we'll get to Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, we got to move on just to get there quicker. That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's it for this week. Join us next time when we'll be discussing giant jizzing flowers that make Spock play for hours in This Side of Paradise.
God damn it. I'm glad you made that rhyme.
Until then, Jolan True, live long, prosper.
And eat a dick, people. Eat a dick.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Roberson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.